Hello, welcome to lesson 16, Lily de Silva. This is the grammar section. In this lesson we deal with the imperative, and it's rather simpler than the optative. There are less forms to learn. I'm looking now at Lily de Silva, page 63. The imperative mood expresses a command, benediction, prayer, or wish. There's a certain overlap between the optative and the imperative. The optative can also express a wish that something might happen. The imperative is a bit more forceful expression that it ought to happen, that you really want it to happen, just suggesting it would be a good idea. Again, it's not an exact barrier between them, just this overlap. The imperative, from the Latin imperare, to command, whereas the optative, the choose what you would like to happen. So in Sanskrit and Pali, you can also have a first-person imperative, as if you're commanding yourself to do something. How do you command yourself to do something? Well, it's more, if you use a first-person imperative, it's more like saying that, recognizing that you are under an obligation. This is what I've got to do, and I will do it. So it's not so much commanding yourself, but recognizing that you're under an obligation, and that can be used in the singular and plural. So let's just look at the forms. I'll call up my iPad for you. The usual simple paradigm of the verb is given. So third person, which you remember in Sanskrit and Pali, they call it the first person, but we'll follow the European grammatical style. So the third person, pachatu, let him cook. Remember that the indicative, just a statement of fact, somebody is cooking, is pachati. So all you do there is to change the E of the indicative to the U for the imperative. It doesn't work for the second, for the you and the me one, but it works in the third person for the he, she, it, and they one. And incidentally, it's the same here in Sanskrit. In Sanskrit, pachati, he, she, it cooks, and pachatu. And the same happens for the plural. They cook is pachanti. Again, these two forms happen to be identical in Sanskrit and Pali. So pachanti, they cook. Let them cook, they must cook, is pachantu. Because the E becomes the U, there it is. You've got your imperative, the third person imperative. We see this in benedictions and prayers, such, for example, may all beings be happy. We say in Pali, sabbe sattva sukhita hontu. If we said sabbe sattva sukhita honti, we would be expressing a statement of fact, which is manifestly untrue as a statement of fact, because sabbe sattva sukhita honti means all beings are happy. Well, great if it were true. But change the honti to hontu, and then you're not expressing a fact, you're expressing a wish, a very strong wish. Sabbe sattva sukhita hontu. In Sanskrit, you would say sarve sattva sukhita bhavantu. Remember, the Pali hunti and huntu are just softened forms of the Sanskrit bhavanti, bhavati, bhavanti, and so on. Bhavati and bhavanti and bhavatu and bhavantu also exist in Pali, but Pali has, alongside those more classical forms, it has the softened, what we call lenited forms, hoti, hunti, hutu, huntu. Now we'll look at the second person. That's the you. This is just pacha. It's a very simple form of the verb. Pachati, pachami, pachasi, pachati. Just pacha. Put the Pali list in Sanskrit. And it's the same, pacha. In Pali, there's an alternative form. You add a he and lengthen the preceding verb, pachahi. And these forms exist side by side with no distinction of meaning. Sometimes they're used even in the different forms used in the same sentence, just for what's called by linguists elegant variation. Sometimes one form rather than another might be used to suit the poetic meter, but so far as concerns actual meaning, no distinction at all. This he, there are certain Sanskrit forms of the imperative that end in he or the, and it is from these that the alternative ending in Pali he is derived. As you would expect, there are very precise rules in Sanskrit for when the forms ending in he, udhi are used. Sometimes, I think I'm right in saying always, there is an exact rule. It either is used or it isn't. There's only one right way of doing it in the imperative. Whereas this he ending has been, as it were, generalized so it can be put on the end of virtually any imperative in Pali, unlike Sanskrit where it's governed by strict rules. So pacha or pachahi. Let us now look at the plural, your second person plural. You're ordering several people to cook, and it is pachata. That is the same as the indicative. You are cooking, pachata. Cook, you lot, cook, pachata. They are distinct in Sanskrit because in Sanskrit, the second person plural of the indicative, you are cooking, would be the same as the Pali. Say indicative and imperative. Pali has, as I've just said, pachata, imperative, same as the indicative. In Sanskrit, it is actually pachata. So the distinction between you are cooking, statement of fact, and cook, an order, in Sanskrit, second person plural, is only the aspiration of the ta, pachata, pachata. And you'll find that pretty much throughout Pali, whereas Sanskrit distinguishes between the indicative and the imperative in the second person plural, the aspirated or non-aspirated, Pali aspirates both of them. Now, let us look at the first person imperative, and it is Lily de Silva gives it as correctly as pachami, and you will see that that is the same as the indicative. But so pachami can mean I am cooking as a statement of fact, I cook, or it can be an imperative like an order directed towards oneself. In Sanskrit, I'm just mentioning this in Pali. In Sanskrit, we know that the indicative, pachami, same as, but the imperative, in fact, is a pachani. So the ami becomes an ani, which is an old Vedic form of the subjunctive. So whenever you see pachani or bhavani used in Sanskrit, Vedic, we know that's the imperative. Whereas in Pali, the distinction has been lost, and you just get the one form pachami, which could be either imperative or indicative. Almost always indicative, because the first person imperative isn't that common. Though you will find it occasionally. Now look for we cook. We are cooking and let us cook. It's kind of the same story between Sanskrit and Pali for the we. We are cooking. This is indicative and imperative. We are cooking in Pali is pachama. Remember, I am cooking pachami. We are cooking pachama. The imperative is the same, pachama. Sanskrit does distinguish them, and I'll show you how. The indicative, we are cooking, has the visarga at the end. It's pachamaha. Whereas the imperative is the same, except that it drops the visarga. So it's pachama. So if you see the form pachama, you know it's an imperative. If you see the form pachamaha, it's the indicative. In Pali, as I said, the distinction between those two has been lost. Note that if you're expressing it in the negative, like don't go, don't cook, don't do, you can use na, just the ordinary na, meaning not, but it's more common, and I think in Sanskrit, I think I'm right in saying it's mandatory to use the ma rather than na. So ma gacha or ma gachahi, don't go. Ma pachata, don't cook. Ma bhavata, do not be. We'll look now at the examples in sentence formation. So the first sentence, let him cook rice for the merchants. Look now towards the bottom of page 63. So vanijanam bhattam pachatu. So if you said vanijanam bhattam pachati, he is cooking rice for the merchants. Here we have the vanijanam, the genitive plural, also doing service for the dative. So here, for the merchants. So, vanijanam bhattam pachatu, let him cook rice. Or he should cook rice, he must cook rice for the merchants. Sentence number 2. You, the way it's put in English, it's a bit ambiguous. It's an order. Oi, you, go to the city in a vehicle. Tuam, you can use out the tuam, sorry, leave out the tuam. Just ratena nagaram gacha. Ratena, by vehicle. Nagaram gacha, go to the city. Or alternatively, nagaram gachahi, no distinction of meaning. Let me learn the Dhamma. Dhammam ganhami. So it's a little bit unfortunate that it happens, because it's useful to maintain the distinctions of meaning. But in Pali, as we've just seen, there is no distinction. No distinction in form. Of course, there's a distinction in meaning. No distinction in form of the word between the indicative and the imperative for the first person, singular or plural. So let me learn the Dhamma, Dhammam ganhami, which, depending on context, and it should normally be evident from context whether you're telling somebody what you're doing or expressing as it were, a command to yourself. This is what I've got to do now. I've got to go and learn the Dhamma. So, han Dhammam ugganhami. Look now at the same sentences in the plural. I'm looking now at page 64. Let them cook rice for the merchants. Te vanijanam bhattam pachantu. Remember, if it were te vanijanam bhattam pachanti, that would be just a statement of fact. They cook rice, or they are cooking rice. Pachantu, imperative, saying that's what they should be doing, it's what they ought to do. Let them do it. Te vanijanam bhattam pachantu. Now, go to the city in the vehicle as a command to two or more people. Tumhe ratena nagarang gacchata. And in Sanskrit, remember, the go to the city in the plural would be nagarang gacchata, just with the non-aspirated T, whereas gacchata in Pali for both the indicative and the imperative. Tumhe ratena nagarang gacchata. And let us learn the Dhamma. Mayan Dhammam ugganhama. Again, depending on context, because of the form of the word, it could be indicative or imperative. The form does not tell us. You have to detect from context, unlike in Sanskrit, where they are distinguished. So, Mayan Dhammam ugganhama. And finally, we come to the use of the prohibitive particle, ma. You are avoiding the truth. Tumhe satcham parivarjeta. That could also be an imperative. You should avoid the truth, but you would not normally see it expressed. You telling somebody you ought to avoid the truth. See, so tumhe satcham parivarjeta would normally mean you are avoiding the truth. Or it could be a wicked instruction to somebody that he should avoid the truth. But put the ma in front of it, and then it disambiguates it. You should not avoid the truth. You must not avoid the truth. Ma tumhe satcham parivarjeta. Do not avoid the truth. Now, the disambiguation comes here with the form of the negating particle. If you said na satcham parivarjeta, just na, that would tend to be followed. That would tend to have an indicative meaning. Just mean you are not avoiding the truth. You're complimenting somebody. Good chap. You are not avoiding the truth. Na satcham parivarjeta. But ma satcham, ma, with that form, you now realize that it's an optative or an imperative. Ma satcham parivarjeta, do not avoid the truth. And the final sentence, let them not pick flowers in the park. Uchinantu. Uchinantu, they are plucking, picking. There's no ambiguity there because the u ending is unambiguously imperative, as in sabbe sata sukhita huntu usukhita bhavantu uchinantu. So they should let them pick flowers in the park would be uyanami pupani uchinantu. But let them not, saying they shouldn't do that. Ma te, or just, you can leave out the te. Ma uyanami pupani uchinantu. Let them not pick flowers in the park. So this now brings us to the end of this brief grammar lesson, and that's all on this one.